Recording. There we go. Well, welcome everybody, and I think Bill and Kevin will be speaking to us today. And do we have a volunteer for an opening prayer?
Yes.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you we can have this meeting, and thank you that the internet is working well so far. Please bless that what we learned tonight will stick with us and that we will remember it when we need to. And, always. Please bless everything will go according to thy will. In the name of Yeshua Messiah, amen.
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 And thank you.
Well, Kevin and I are going to talk a little about the Book of Mormon and government. I guess let me just give a little something I think is interesting, because the Book of Mormon has been referred to at various times and in various ways. One of the ways it's been described as a handbook of freedom. And, when these various expeditions have come from the old world over to the Americas, they describe it as going to a land of choice, except they don't really say that. They say they go to a land choice above other lands, or a land of opportunity, or land of freedom type thing. One of the things we've been going through the Book of Mormon, and I noticed we were looking in the Book of Ether, and there's a description here, and what it says is the Jaredites are coming to this new world. When they come here, some of the language is what I've just said, and let me go through this because it's kind of interesting. The Lord is saying, this is on page 542. The Lord said unto him, I will forgive thee and thy brethren of their sins, but thou shalt not sin any more. For ye shall remember that my spirit will not always strive with man. Wherefore, if ye will sin until ye are fully ripe, ye shall be cut off from the presence of the Lord. And this is my thoughts. These are the Lord's thoughts upon the land which I shall give unto you for your inheritance. And the language says this, for it shall be a land choice above all other lands. I think that's how most of us are familiar with this Book of Mormon language, because it describes a land of promise, a land of the inheritance. Lehi comes here with this covenant and the promised blessing. But this is an interesting little phrase here, because it says, this is what the Lord says. This is how I think about it. He says, I'm going to give you a land choice. But in the printer's manuscript, there's another word in there. It says the land of choice. And that was written in there by Oliver Cowdery. And when John Gilbert, the printer, set the print, he thought, no, everything else says land choice above other lands, etc. So he thought, I just scratch that of out. Well, that's a nice little of to have right here, because it describes what's going on here in the Americas. This is a land of choice. It's a place where you can exercise agency. You can come here and you can make a decision. You can decide to serve the Lord, or serve whatever Lord you want to serve. And that's you have the agency to do that. So I just wanted to start out by making that little point. And so one of the central things that I've always noticed in the Book of Mormon is that it describes, in fact, it says this right up front in 2nd Nephi chapter 4. These are Nephi, you got Nephi is Lehi's son, and he's got some brothers that want to fight him all the time. And this would be 2nd Nephi chapter 4, right at the first of the chapter. And it says, "Wherefore now let us slay him." These are the brothers, the Lamanites. "Let us slay him," Nephi, "that we may not be afflicted more because of his words. For behold, we will not that he shall be our ruler. For it belongeth unto us, which are the elder brethren, to rule over this people." This theme is repeated all the time in the Book of Mormon. Who is the ruler? So that's kind of a groundwork we wanted to talk about. So I thought with that, maybe I'll pass it over to Kevin with a question about what does the name America, what does that mean? What's that? How's that been described
Well,
in the scripture?
first one comment about that scripture in 2nd Nephi, and I find it interesting that Laman and Lemuel felt that they were being afflicted because of their younger brother, because he was encouraging them to do what the Lord wanted them to do. That was a great affliction for them that they had to overcome. So they decided, well, let's just kill him. This is a wicked thing, pretty evil thing. But in answer to what does America mean? Well, we were taught in school as we were growing up that it was named after the Italian explorer Amerigo Vespucci.
He was your uncle, wasn't he?
He was he was twice removed. Yeah, he was an uncle twice removed.
From the old country.
Yeah, from the old country. And this is from a book written back in the 1800s by John Henry Evans on the prophet Joseph Smith. But he goes into great length and great detail. I'm not sure if you're wanting me to read this or not, but
well, just
he
just
points,
the relevant part.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure what you're trying to get out of this. It's a long paragraph. He gets out that, and it has to do with the translation of the languages and the translation of Hebrew. But he talks about the differences that at the time of Nephi and the time of Lehi, that let me see if I can find it here. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. So a professor says that he's saying that in the Hebrew, they would not have referred to it as the Hebrew language. They would have referred to it as the language of the Jews or the Jewish language, and not of the Hebrew language. So they called it Reformed Egyptian, which was a mixture of actual Hebrew and Egyptian at the time. So I'm not sure what it is that you're looking for in here, but I did read this. But
well, let me tell you what I'm thinking.
Okay.
For example, I've got my old. This went with me on a Mormon mission.
This is your missionary.
The old triple combination.
Yeah.
And I'd write stuff in the back of it. Brilliant stuff, of course. And one of the things I have there is something I think we're all familiar with, the name Melchizedek. What does that mean? Well, Melech is king and Zadok is righteous. So Melchizedek is king of righteousness. Well, a name title is the same thing with the word America. I hate to offend the Italians. I don't want to get sideways because I love your chicken parmesan. I love your spaghetti. But it's not associated with I want to qualify to have more of your food. Florentine Vespucci is a guy that they think, America is kind of connected to. Well, that's not true. In the Book of Mormon theology, when you read it and you see how Joseph Smith looked at things and he understood these languages, the name of America is really one of those name titles. And what does it mean? Well, in the Book of Mormon, we have a couple phrases here. We have Amaleki and Amalekiah, right? And so he breaks it down and he says the root word is Mulek, M-U-L-E-K, which is another Nephite proper noun. So Dr. Sojal, and remember, in the old days, for us old guys, we had the book of the Doctrine and Covenants commentary, Reynolds and Sodal. These were guys that were scholars that wrote 5-volume series on the Doctrine and Covenants, the early Mormon Doctrine and Covenants. And so Sodal is a linguist. He's one of these guys that understands this stuff. So he breaks it down. He says, well, this name means 3 things. The Hebrew definite article the, and Malik, or M-A-L-I-C-K, which means king, and I, or the I-A-H, which means Jehovah. Huh. So the name America means the King Jehovah. That's who's in charge of this land. This is the Lord's land. This is the promised land. This is his earth, obviously. There's a wrestling match going on, be some other guy that thinks he's the landlord, but the name America means that Jehovah is king here. So here you are in Nephite land, early days, and you're Nephi, you come here with your dad, Lehi, and now somehow you become a king? It's like, this doesn't make much sense if you believe that this is the Lord's land. I'm not faulting Nephi, but I think it's interesting because the first thing we have to understand is whose land is this and what work is supposed to take place on this land.
Well, and the Book
so
of Mormon does,
Go ahead.
sorry, the Book of Mormon does point out that those who are brought to this hand are brought here by the hand of the Lord,
Right.
and that it is reserved, for those whom the Lord brings over. So the Mulekites and the Jaredites and Lehi and his family that all came over were all led here by the hand of the Lord. And there maybe have been many migrations that came here that were also led by the hand of the Lord,
Right.
that we don't actually have a record for. But suffice it to say that it is a very special place on the earth, and that it is intended to have the Lord's people here, and it is a land preserved for a righteous people, and that as soon as the individuals that are here turn to wickedness, if they are righteous, they will have the protection of the Lord. When they become unrighteous, they're not going to be protected by the Lord. When I'm talking about in the entirety as opposed to individuals. This is which should be reflected in and it should be reflected in the governments that are set to govern over the peoples that are brought here. That the gospel is to be the preeminent factor and the commandments in terms of how the people are to conduct themselves that are brought here, and they are to continue to worship the Lord.
So in Book of Mormon terms, they start out and they come here as free people and talk about the main migration that's in the Book of Mormon, Lehi and Nephi. Now, you trace down through their history and they come to King Mosiah. And King Mosiah is a good guy, right? But he is a king. There's now a line of kings. Well, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing?
Well, it's a good thing if the kings are righteous, but how often have we seen unrighteous kings that lead the people to sin, lead them
Yeah.
to a corrupt way of life? And so, and a king can be a good thing if all kings were good, but not all kings are good. So
Yeah, in
there's,
fact, yeah.
yeah,
Look
so
at the
there has
kings.
to be another way to do it, which is,
It's
of course,
very rare.
right.
What the problem with a king is this thing called idolatry. Because you're the king and now everybody thinks you're cool. And so what do? They're admiring you. They're sending you their love and their positive energy, and they're baking you an apple pie because they think you love apple pie. And they're trying to get their son to marry your daughter, and they're making this guy the object of worship instead of the Lord, right?
Right.
And so what happens? Now you become a fat King Noah. You're sitting there on your throne, throwing your wealth around, looking like Jabba the Hutt. And that's not good because next thing you know, you're taxing your people till you get every drop of blood out of them and you're commanding them to do this and that. And you've just created a hell on earth, right?
That's correct.
And so King Messiah, who was a king, who was a good guy, he says, hey, we got to do something here because we got to sort this thing out because, it was time to change the king. And his sons were like, dang it, Dad, we don't want to do that.
Well, they
We
wanted
know
to go
that's
on a
not a
mission
good
to the
thing.
Lamanites.
Well, so he gets the voice of the people and he says, let's do this. I'm going to make an idea. This is chapter 13 in Mosiah, chapter 13. And, he'll go through the history here and he says, what we got to do, and you look at it, and we're going to observe to do this. Make it your law to do your business by the voice of the people. And if it comes time that the voice of the people chooses iniquity, then it's the time that the judgments of God will come upon them. This is actually the Lord saying, it will come upon you. Yea, and this is the time he will visit you with great destruction, even as he hath hereto visited this land. So Messiah is a bright guy. And again, chapter 13, I've got this listed as verse 12, the way we do it in our new version of the Book of Mormon. I command you to do these things in the fear of the Lord, and I command you that ye shall have no king, that if these people commit sin and iniquity, they shall be answered upon their own heads. For behold, I say unto you, the sins of many people have been caused by the iniquities of their kings. Therefore, their iniquities are answered upon the heads of the king. And now I desire that this unequality should be no more in this land, especially among this my people. It's supposed to be a land of liberty, right? So he has to present this to the people. Because you see what he's saying. If I'm the king, and if I'm a bad king, and I do some bad stuff, you can blame me. And so are you, the people, willing to receive accountability for your own sins? If you vote for a governmental policy, then you're accountable to that. If you say it's okay to tax this little old widow and take all her property, then you're accountable for that. See, because government is my agent. I'm a member of a government. The government can't do anything that I don't allow them to do. They're my arm. They're going to do what it takes. And so if the government is stealing from somebody, that's me. I'm stealing. I'm just doing it through government. So this gets a little sticky. And so Mosiah is like, hey, we can't have this. I'm going to present it to you. Do you people want to be responsible for your own sins? Do you want to be accountable personally for your acts in relation to government? This is pretty harsh. People don't think about it. But now we got governments blowing stuff up all over, killing people, driving people, stealing all their wages, making them do weird stuff. And so if you're supporting that governmental theory, you're, now in the old days, I'd say you're aiding and abetting, counseling, encouraging by act or omission and by acting as the lookout driver, or you're the guy supplying the whatever they're selling that's illegal. You're responsible. I don't care how you do it. Or it might be that you're conspiring to commit that act. A good prosecutor will always have that language on, or conspiring to do it, because that way a jury could say, yeah, I can see he agreed to do that. So it makes him liable for this stuff. So this is King Messiah, right? And he's pitching this. Do you guys want to get a system of government that makes you personally accountable for the things that government does that's all goofy? Am I saying this right, Kevin? Does that make sense?
I would say so. And basically, he tells the people that they're going to reorganize the government, and they are going to elect righteous men to assist in leading this. But he says, we're going to lay down a set of rules, and those rules will become our laws of the land, and we will abide by those laws. He reminds them that his entire life that he has worked for his own support. He hasn't taxed the people. He hasn't taken away or caused them to be unhappy. And his sons, of course, wanted to go out and do the work of the Lord. They didn't really want to be involved in government. And as a result of that, he's saying, okay, so up to that point in time, if you have a king, the king is responsible for pretty much most of the things that take place in the kingdom. But now we're going to have a voice, the voice of the people, establish a set of laws, commandments for the people, as it were, to live by, and so that they could live in harmony, so that they could live in peace. And it was a measure of freedom that the people had not had prior to that, when they had kings to be their rulers. And so, none of his sons wanted to take the throne. And so this is why he had proposed this to the people, and the people were in agreement. They loved Messiah, because Messiah knew that he loved them, that he had their welfare in mind, and they trusted him. Unlike
he's
a
not
lot
a
of
control freak. He's
Yeah,
not
he's not
doing
a
it for
control
him.
freak
He's not ripping them off. He's not taxing them. He's
Sure.
He's really a pretty nice guy. And so he sets up this system of government where they elect judges.
Right.
And they have the voice of the people says, this guy is going to be the chief judge, or he's going to be a judge, he's going to do this. And so if these laws, the judge now will help interpret the laws, because the laws existed then by the time of Messiah. So it becomes kind of interesting, because now if the people are accepting or supporting goofy laws that do goofy stuff, then they're goofy. They're going to be accountable. And it's an interesting concept, because this system of government now is adopted by who? I mean, it becomes, in Book of Mormon terms, yet Lehi had 1,000 years of his people come here on an expedition, right? 600 BC to 400 AD. That's 1,000 years. The Jaredites go from the Book of Ether to the Tower of Babel until about 600 BC. That's 2,600 years. And then you've got right there, that's 3,600 years of Book of Mormon history. How much of the Book of Mormon covers the period where they had the system of government similar to what we have here in the Americas? I mean, almost half the Book of Mormon is covered by this same, when they have the same similar kind of government. Huh, what a coincidence.
Yeah.
Because now they're saying something here. There's a message that the Book of Mormon is trying to get through to us, that we might be accountable for those acts of government that are occurring. You know, we have to voice our opinion. We can't just
You know,
whitewash
and it
everything.
works, and it works well as long as you have a righteous people that are willing to follow God and to follow the commandments. It was Ben Franklin, after the framers of the U.S. Constitution had developed that, and I believe it was right after or during the Constitutional Convention that they broke for lunch, and Ben Franklin walks out of the meeting, and they asked him, "Well, what have you given here?" And he said, "A republic, if you can keep it."
Yeah.
And the meaning there was that if you can learn to live by God's laws and God's commandments, you will have prosperity. But when wickedness begins to creep into those societies, as it did into the Nephite society as well, then things go awry, because not long after, Alma was called as the first chief judge. And not that many years after Alma, not too many generations had passed before the people really had become wicked. The Gadian robbers had overtaken the land. They began to creep into the government. So they first go to the Lamanites, and the Lamanites give them the boot. They said, we don't want what you're selling. What they were selling was wickedness.
They did more than give them the boot too.
Yeah, they did. And so the Gadiantans go over to the Nephites, and they began to preach to the Nephites. And I'm going to read this, because this is a really interesting part of the Book of Mormon. This is on page 425 in the Book of Helaman. And it says, "And it came to pass that the Lamanites did hunt the band of robbers of Gadian." They had become more righteous than the Nephites at this point. "And they did preach the word of God among the more wicked part of them, insomuch that this band of robbers was utterly destroyed from among the Lamanites. And it came to pass, on the other hand, that the Nephites did build them up and support them, beginning at the more wicked part of them, until they had overspread all the land of the Nephites, and had seduced the more part of the righteous, until they had come down to believe in their works, and partake of their spoils, and to join with them in their secret murders and combinations. And thus they did obtain the sole management of government, insomuch that they did trample under their feet, and smite, and rend, and turn their backs upon the poor and the meek, and the humble followers of God. And thus we see that they were in an awful state, ripening for an everlasting destruction." And that happens with the societies on this land, when they're not willing to follow the God of this land, which is Yeshua. And
well, I'm so glad we're not doing that.
yeah, and we see, the plan hasn't changed, the program hasn't changed. We see that abroad in our government today, both in the United States and in Canada, where there's evil individuals that have gotten in there. There's secret combinations, and as a result of that, the people of North America and in Mexico as well, are ripening for destruction.
Yeah.
So,
well, let me back up just a little bit, because one thing you said, you're talking about the founding fathers in the United States, and they come up with this idea of this model of confederacy. And where do they get that from? I'll tell you, the influence,
from the natives.
yeah,
Right.
they got it from the Iroquois.
Yeah.
And who set up
Iroquois
the laws of
Confederacy.
the Iroquois?
Yeah.
Decaduita.
Yeah.
So the Decaduita system becomes, the native indigenous government system of freedom and confederacy, the balance of power, individual freedoms seen in the U.S. government, the balance of power between the state government and the federal government, emphasis on the individual liberty, the Bill of Rights. Decaduita wrote the Iroquois Constitution, rules and regulations relating to the Iroquois life. And that becomes the 5 nations, later the 6 nations. And then we have, the American Indian. So this system of balance of power and this system of election of judges with firm laws that should be wisely enacted and executed, it comes right from the Lord through Decaduita and the Iroquois. And then the United States government has been patterned by most of the governments in North and South America to an extent. But let me get to a little interesting thing here, because there gets to be some conflict, right? And so one of the guys that you really like in Book of Mormon terms who deals with this conflict, some people call him General Moroni, but the Book of Mormon technically calls him Chief Commander of the armies of the Nephites, Moroni. That's a little more mouthful to say, but he is the chief commander of the armies of the Nephites. And so he has one period of time where he's dealing with some rowdy Lamanites, and of course they're fighting, and he's out there doing the work. And there's a guy that starts writing him nasty letters and epistles, they would call them, and so some of these things become kind of interesting. I'm going to look for the exact quote here because it is interesting what it really spells out. It's what happens when you got too many papers in front of you. But it is in the Book of Alma. So I think it's chapter 58. While I'm looking, I've reverted to my old habits. I'm looking at the LDS numbering here, so I apologize. We have these epistles that go between these two guys, Moroni, because he's a brilliant commander. He's a man of God. He's about as good a guy as you could help or hope to have being involved, and yet he's really dealing with these challenges that are pretty severe. And here's what Amaron, now this is in LDS scripture, be Alma chapter 54. And I think it was, I can't remember the chapter number in the 1830 Book of Mormon, but here, Amaron, king of the Lamanites, I'm the brother of Amalickiah, whom ye have murdered. Notice the words here, Amalickiah. What's that kind of represent? Behold, I will avenge his blood upon you. I'm going to come down there and I don't fear your armies. I don't fear your threatenings. Your fathers wronged their brethren insomuch that they did rob them of their right to the government when it rightly belonged unto them. See, this is the central focus, at least in a lot of respects, of the Book of Mormon. To whom does the government rightly belong? Here's Amaron with the chief commander of the Nephites accusing him of taking, control that was his. In other words, this is the battle in the war in heaven. Again, you're trying to supplant the Lord as the property right owner of this land, who's got the right to give the rules and that kind of thing. And now it's been taken over by this foreign entity. And of course, Moroni wouldn't have anything to do with that. Shut him right down. And of course, this is one of the main battles of the Book of Mormon. It really becomes interesting stuff because you have this central issue: to whom does the government rightly belong? And we know in section 134 of the Doctrine and Covenants that we are to comply with the rules of government. And we encourage that.
Bill, it's interesting that Amram was a Nephite by birth. He wasn't a Lamanite, but he was leading the Lamanite armies.
Yeah.
The Book of Mormon points out that he had a perfect knowledge of his fraud. He was a liar, and he knew he was a liar.
Yeah. I think most guys in that position are equally aware of their situation.
I'm sure. Yeah.
It's not done in the dark. We believe governments were instituted of God for the benefit of man, and that he holds men accountable for their acts in relation to them, both in making laws and administering them for the good and safety of society. Here's the revelation through Joseph Smith. You're personally accountable for your acts in relation to government. Those ideals and ideas you push and support, you're accountable. Right. We believe no governments can exist in peace except such laws are framed and held inviolate as they will secure to each individual the free exercise of conscience, the right and control of property, and the protection of life. Protection of life. This is interesting because we kind of talk about the system of kings. See how we're doing on time. Some of this stuff is just kind of fun to talk about. Recently, the United States government revisited a court ruling from 1973. And it was a court ruling by the federal government in the United States Supreme Court dealing with the right to life. And it's called Roe versus Wade. And that right to life, that we, respect the right to life, right? Except if the federal government says constitutionally you can abort your child. Well, in terms of the idea that you've got a king and the king is going to issue a rule, this is kind of a good application of that, because the Supreme Court, the supreme law of the land, didn't really care what all the states said. In 1973, they just said, hey, this is the rule. If you find some reason, and they get a formula of trimesters and this and that, and they said, well, constitutionally, you have a constitutional right to do this act. Okay. Now that's the equivalent of a king saying this is the rule. And then people are thinking, well, I didn't agree to that rule. And so here, 50 years later, what happens? Supreme Court of the United States revisits that rule, and they say, hey, you know what? That was kind of stupid. I think what we're going to do now is we're not going to say that you have a constitutional right to do that. We're going to say that each state is going to have to make that decision. Sounds like Mosiah all over again. We're going to give each state the opportunity to agree to the laws that they promote. Well, what does that do as of a couple of years ago when they changed this law? Now, each state is accountable for their acts in relation to this issue. Right. And some states have gone crazy, with you have the right to do this. And other states have said you don't have any rights at all to influence or take the life of an unborn child. So
There have been some instances too where even with children that have come full term, where the women's have gone in for this procedure, and the child actually was born alive, that they then proceeded to put to death.
yeah, there are some states that
Terrible,
allow that.
horrific. Yeah,
And so there's a natural consequence when we voluntarily choose to agree to such a course of conduct. And there's a consequence to all rules. You know, there's there is a rules irrevocably, laws irrevocably decreed before the foundation of this world, upon which all blessings are predicated. When we, violate these laws, there's a result. And that's what the Book of Mormon says. And this was pretty clear when Messiah set up this system of government where there is individual accountability for what goes on. This is what's taking place in society right now. And we're seeing the things line up. We're seeing governmental patterns and shiftings going on with this. And so this Book of Mormon, this handbook of freedom, is perhaps something we ought to pay attention to. It does make it pretty interesting because it is a central theme in who has the right to control government, who's in charge. And I do love this statement that America means the King Jehovah. This is his land. And I like that personally. And I've seen several references where you can support that idea. So Kevin, what am I missing? Is this pretty make sense at all?
yeah, it does. And essentially, the purpose of the laws that we're supposed to be living now are to give that accountability to the people. And in theory, the people control the government. In practice, not so much. But in theory, the government is answerable ultimately to the people. We're seeing some changes around the world right now. There's some real upheaval in the Middle East, and as a result, I saw some news reports earlier today of uprisings from the people in some of these areas. But ultimately, the people should have the right to choose their own destiny. I mean, it is the law of agency, after all, is the Lord's law. We didn't invent it. We're supposed to be able to control ourselves. And anytime you are compelled to do something, or the government does something that, if you as an individual tried to do that, we would be put in jail or whatever. We tried to compel people to do certain things, but yet the government that is supposed to be representing us today takes full advantage of that and compels people to do things all the time, which is contrary to the laws of God. So we're living in a pretty perilous time, I think.
Well, I think we each have to study the issues enough and have
Of
an
course.
understanding of agency and an understanding what's right, what's wrong. We have to be willing to accept accountability for our decisions and the things we
Right.
support. This abortion thing is a biggie, and we will see a lot of results come because of those actions where the people, because the Book of Mormon tells us flat out, you're accountable for this, your course of conduct. And it's interesting because 50 years after Big Brother, the federal government, saying this is a constitutional right, now they've said each state has to make a constitutional decision on, and is based on the morality of their people.
right.
And in essence, some of those areas, there's very little morality.
Well,
And
once again, Ben Franklin made the comment. He said, the Constitution of the United States is geared only for a righteous people. It is wholly inadequate for, and I'm paraphrasing here, it's wholly inadequate for people that do not want to be answerable to God for their actions. And so it's true, if the people choose wickedness, if the time comes that the people choose wickedness over righteousness, then the judgments of God will come upon them. So we see that that's kind of a, and when I say judgments, I think he removes his protection from us more than anything else, and evil is allowed to dominate society, and that can take place in a lot of different ways. So
yeah, karma's not going to sleep through it.
no,
There are natural consequences, and the people, they have behaviors, and there's natural results.
I think there will be protection by and large for those that are obedient to the commandments and to that are striving with all of their might to follow Heavenly Father and Yeshua and do the things that they should. There's a measure of protection that will come along with that. Doesn't mean there won't be hardship. It doesn't mean that there won't be some bad times that they have to go through. But I think that those individuals, by and large, will be better off than those that choose evil. So, all commandments that Father has given to us are designed to bring happiness.
Yeah. This is interesting stuff. Of course, I have a background in political science, so I've always enjoyed the looking at it from this governmental viewpoint. Because you look at the Book of Mormon, it's really a freedom handbook that's pretty good. And I know there are those that have taught, if you're ever trying to decide who to vote for, go read King Messiah. And when it's established this, the judges, and where you have to be accountable for your acts that you're actually supporting. So it becomes a little scary.
Sure, and if you're going to be accountable for it, you're going to want to make sure that you're doing the right thing all the time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Hey, Kevin and I have been doing a lot of talking. So, comments.
well, that he means you guys.
Yeah.
Well, I certainly think that it's definitely happening today. So
Yeah, it is.
Were those real Northern Lights, or is that a screensaver?
They're
I
beautiful.
like it.
yep.
I want to know how you got up there to Canada so quickly from San Francisco, though, because at the beginning of the meeting, you were right next to the Golden Gate Bridge, and that's
Kevin, he's
impressive.
teleporting. Teleport, man.
Ah, gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah,
It is interesting.
we're living it
Yeah, living the
through
dream.
it right now.
So,
Much of the Book of Mormon is a type and shadow of things that are happening to us today.
well, you look at these societies in the Book of Mormon, and they didn't do so well. The
No.
Jaredites, the Nephites. We still got some Lamanites around, but got all these other peoples. They ended up disappearing.
Well,
I
they
find
got
it-
the raw deal, the bad end of the stick, as it were.
Yeah.
I always
Joseph,
find it kind of interesting how it didn't really matter in the book, if you ask me, uh, whether they were led by a king or whether they got to vote for their leaders. The people were always angry when they got led by a righteous king and wanted to rebel, and they would leave and go join the Lamanites or whoever. And when they had political choice and could vote their leaders, every time their leader didn't get voted in, they still left and joined with whoever else. And they still had all the wars and uprisings and civil unrest. And they seemed to have an awful lot more civil unrest when they had the vote. And today, it seems like from time to time we get a little bit of that ourselves.
Yeah. Or a lot of that ourselves.
Sometimes, yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I know there's books written about this issue. There's one that is Jonathan Cahn, a Jewish guy, wrote this thing, the Josiah Manifesto. Kind of goes through some of the history of this, the abortion rulings, and spells out destructive type results, including the pandemic and things that happened at various areas based on political things they had done. So there is a connection. And I just thought this would be interesting because when we see certain areas that have voted to treat life in a certain way, it will be interesting to see what results come their way. And not that we're wishing anything bad on anybody.
Well, of course.
But it is pretty interesting because it's really kind of slickly laid out in the Book of Mormon with a pretty severe warning.
Well, as always, I'm very strongly opinionated on certain things, and I believe that there is a connection between a couple of things in the Book of Mormon, and I wouldn't mind pointing it out. It has to do with the political nature of things, but I think it's a connection that maybe people do not realize enough. Every time there's a political downfall or a problem, there is a direct correlation with certain behaviors that always come immediately preceding any type of political or civil unrest. And that is actually the the parents raising their children. If you'll notice at the very beginning of the Book of Mormon, you have Lehi, who was a wealthier individual, used to be, and was influential and was affluent as well, had his own businesses, could collected a lot of riches, things like that. And he did not pay much attention during that time to his older children, Laman and Lemuel. And as he got older and retired, he seemed to pay a little bit more attention to Sam and Nephi. And then as he was, dwelling in a tent, nowhere to go, couldn't go anywhere, nothing to do with his life, he paid an awful lot of attention to Jacob and Joseph. And he his main focus had changed to raising those boys with one focus only. It wasn't to support his family. It was only to raise those children toward the Lord. And those boys got to see the Savior while they were young, even starting from a young age. And the other two boys from the distant past rebelled an awful lot to the point where they were, had planned and to kill their own dad and everything else like that. And I mean, there was a serious disconnect there. Now, the reason I bring this up is because we also see this later on. Even at the time when the Savior comes to the Nephites, and we see it in between too. I could name off those times too, but let's just jump to the end there. When we see it with the Nephites, the Lord comes and teaches them, establishes Zion, and a few generations go by where they are living in peace, and people growing up living in that, the parents lose the dedication, the diligence in raising their children with that focus, and their children go astray again and start the civil unrest all over again. And anytime we go through the Book of Mormon, when we see everything going well, uh, they they definitely show the connection between how the children are raised. The focus of the writing in the book reveals what the people's focus is, and it's no longer toward the family or raising good fruit toward the Lord. And so it always happens, and it happened with the Jaredites also, same exact thing. And it's written right there. It's just, I think we pass over it, we gloss over it a little bit, and in reality, we need to make the Lord and our eternal future and our children's eternal future the one and only top priority of all things, and all things should take a knee to that, and never encroach upon that at all. And that is what happened when people started raising their children properly, when the Lord taught them how. you know you had the whole country converted. What happened when they were not raised with that single focus of being of the utmost importance? We had civil unrest. And at least this is a connection that I see. And so for myself, I don't think the solution lies in I think that Decaduitas teachings are a great tool. I do not think that's the solution. I think the solution is the focus of how the children are being raised and what their focus is. When they focus on what the purpose of this earth is, then yeah, the Constitution is an amazing tool, and will make the country go far, and will alleviate all suffering, and will allow for agency, and allow for freedom, and allow for a republic with the protection of the individual as well as the protection of the community. And that is a very nice thing, but that can only happen when the children are raised properly, with their first primary focus on nothing comes between you and Father, very first commandment. And so
Well, I think you've nailed it. I think that's great. I think the cause down here, a lot of it is they've so structured society that they've got the mother outside the home and the father. And so the morality is being taught by the public school system,
yeah.
which is just teaching Satanism for the most part, quite openly. So these kids go to public school and they're debating whether they're a girl or a boy, or even a cat or a dog. And Russia looks at what's going on with some of that. Putin would just laugh. But they're trying to fix some of that now. But it is so ridiculous because these younger kids who've been raised in this mist of darkness, not just darkness, it's black. They are missing light. But it's because they have no moral foundation.
Right.
But it's intentional.
So the answer really isn't any kind of political system or political leaning or anything else. It really is found, to be that cliche in the family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the solution will be within the walls of your home. And that is literal. Lehi, you can see a little bit of his shift because the names of his children. Laman and Lemuel are Arabic or Aramaic names. And then Nephi and Sam are primarily Egyptian. And then when he's focusing on his Hebrew roots, it's Jacob and Joseph. And you think, we see what Lehi was kind of going through. I think we all have that, little journey we have to go through.
Well, of course. I mean, that's why it's written there, is to show us the transition of Lehi and for us to follow that same program.
Yeah. It would be nice to have his book.
Yes, it would. I agree.
Touche.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, well, this is one of the things I've thought about talking about for a while. There's another topic that will be fun that this is related to. One of the things I talked here about when you talk about chiasms or chiasmus, the Hebrew literary things found throughout the Book of Mormon. That'll be a discussion we should do some point, because one of those Hebraisms, one of those chiasmus, leads you right to the main argument in the Book of Mormon about who has the right to control. It's really interesting. Anyway, Kevin, I think that's about it for us, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah, thank you for the input, Joseph.
Yeah, that's great.
Do we have anybody that would like to volunteer for an opening prayer? Do we have somebody that's been asked?
Right.
Closing prayer, rather.
Go ahead, please.
Dear Heavenly Father, I thank Thee for this day. Thank Thee we could have this meeting. Please close this meeting. Please bless that everything will go well. In the name of Yeshua Messiah, amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for putting up with us.
Thank you, everybody.